Hi, good afternoon. My name's Jody Day, and thanks very much for the introduction. I'm the founder of Gateway Women. And I thought I'd start by telling you just a little bit about my background. I'm 48 and a half, and I've worked out that the only people who count their age in halves are children under 10 or women who are still hopeful of having a family. Because your fertility clock starts to work in halves, quarters, months. It gets very frantic towards the end. So I don't really think of myself as 48 and a half anymore. But that's been a big mission for me because it was actually 5 years ago last month when I realized that my 15-year dream of becoming a mother was not going to happen. I had been married, tried to conceive during my marriage, quite a long marriage, 16 years, but when things had gone wrong and broke up because of my husband's drink problems and drug problems, when I was 38, I was fine. I thought that I had plenty of time to meet someone and do IVF, which I had as much knowledge about. It was somewhere in between sort of going to the dentist and getting my fringe trimmed. I really wasn't sure what was involved, but I knew it would be fine and it would work. Because, of course, all we hear about in the media is miracle baby stories. Women of all kinds of ages and all kinds of difficult circumstances conceiving against the odds. What we don't hear about the fact is that actually IVF is more often doesn't work than does. It is frontier science, and it often doesn't work, particularly if you're over 40. So that day 5 years ago, when I kind of realized with a thud, having just broken up from my sort of most serious post-divorce relationship, that I was 43 and a half, that, if I met someone, I'd need to know them for at least a year before we could even think about doing IVF, so then I'd be 44 and a half. It wasn't going to happen. It was too late. And at that moment, it was like I came out of denial. I came out of denial about the fact that I was no longer someone who one day was going to become a mother. I was childless, and it wasn't going to change. And today is Mother's Day, and it's a tough day. It's a celebration of motherhood. And it's really difficult for women like me and all of the women who are in my community who have arrived at being childless by so many different ways. We think that childlessness, there's sort of a room called childlessness with 2 doors. Didn't want, couldn't have. And it's so much more complex than that. I know hundreds of different stories, from being with a partner who already has children and doesn't want them anymore, or being with a partner who doesn't want children, but this is your soulmate, this is the person you want to be with. Many different health issues, money issues, and an increasing rise in something called social infertility, which is not finding a partner to have a child with before it's too late. And this is massively on the increase and causes a lot of shame. People feel that the women feel it must be something they've done wrong, when in actual fact we're living through the most extraordinary generational change in dating and mating. I call the generation of women born in the 60s and 70s the shock absorber generation for the sexual revolution. Everything has changed. The landscape that our mothers thought we were going to inherit wasn't quite what they expected, but they sort of said to us it would be a great idea to go for it, and we did. And I certainly, wouldn't turn the clock back on, higher education and professional careers and all of those things for women, but it has made things a little bit difficult balancing that with finding a partner and having a family. So we're actually 1 in 5 women over 45 currently doesn't have children. This is double what it normally is. It's normally 10%, it's currently 20%. It may well be increasing in the 1970s cohort. That's the figure for the 1960s cohort. Because I think the rise of social infertility is even higher for the 1970s cohort. The last time childlessness was this high in the population was actually the cohort born around 1900, who had to deal with both the loss of so many men in the First World War and the Great Depression. That's what it took to bring childlessness up to the statistic it is now. So it gives you an idea of how big the moment of social change is that we're living through. I don't know what they'll call us, just like the Elizabethans didn't know they were Elizabethans, but I'm sure there's going to be a name for us at some point. I'm not sure what it is. So the title of my talk is, it's pretty ambitious, Creating a Meaningful and Fulfilling Life Without Children in 10 minutes. So I really set myself up here, I'm sorry. But I think meaning is a really important topic to talk about. And with the women I work with in my communities and in my groups and in workshops, this seems to be the biggest problem with women who are definitely childless, not the ones that are still hopeful. They're mostly in a state of panic and they just need someone to hold. But Nietzsche said that he who has a why can cope with almost any how. And that's the thing. It's like if you arrive at childlessness, and that was really what you constellated your meaning around, the idea that you would be a mother, and being a mother, you know, is potentially an incredibly meaningful thing. Even if it's not a great experience, it's still a meaningful one. And it can feel very hard as a childless woman to work out what you're for. And the messages that come at you in the culture is that basically you failed, you're not a real woman. So like me, I'm a 48-year-old, single, childless, old bag, spinster, menopausal, washed up, live alone with my cat. It's great. Do you know what I mean? But that message isn't out there. I mean, we're not actually washed up and finished, but that's the kind of the role that is sort of assigned to us. But the fact is we don't have to agree with it. Childless women are quite a threat to the status quo. We had a panel debate yesterday about that, and it's really, childless women are quite powerful. So we're quite a destabilizing influence, because a childless woman shows that if she does well in her career, if that's her interest, because she's not bringing up children, she's kind of on the same pegging as a man. So she can do as well as a man, if she wants to. So that sort of disproves the status quo idea that men are better at these things. Because it's actually, no, they're just not bringing up children. That's why they've got the time to do these things. I mean, Julia Gillard, the Australian Prime Minister, really suffers from that. She's been called by the leader of the opposition deliberately barren. She gets all kinds of things thrown at her. Now there is, when you talk about meaning, there's this idea that you have to do something really big. Do you know what I mean? That because I'm not a mother, the figure that comes up a lot is Mother Teresa. You know, it's like, because I'm not a mother, I need to sort of, I had this idea that I was going to devote my life, I was going to go and live in an orphanage in Laos. And then I didn't. And then I was going to go and work in Afghanistan in this organisation which was to do with jewellers and things like that, and my background was in design. And in the end, I decided not to take the job because I didn't want to go in October. Because I've been in hot countries in winter and I know what they're like, and I knew I'd be either boiling or freezing the whole time. So I said, actually, I don't want to go. And my friend said, so you're okay with the idea of being blown up, but you don't want to be cold? And I went, yeah. And reflecting back on that now, I understand. It's like I felt my life was so meaningless. You know, I didn't have a husband or children. You know, it would be fine if I got blew up. If anything, at some points, it actually would have been a relief. Because I was finding the burden of my inner world as someone who hadn't become a mother so intolerable. There were days that I really wasn't that interested in carrying on with it. So, but this idea that we need to be Mother Teresa is the idea that we have something to make up for, which I would really, really like to challenge. I don't think you have to have a big life on the outside to be a childless woman, but I do think you need to have a big life on the inside. You need to have the support of your sisters, because there's so much social prejudice against us at the moment that is often invisible to people who either aren't in this position or who are mothers. But we lose our friends all move to this country called motherhood, where we can't go and we don't speak the language. We're seen as the weirdos, we get left out of parties. It's like, you know, we end up as sort of social pariahs, just because of an accident of biology or timing, or not meeting the right person at the right time. So you will need, if you are a childless by circumstance woman, you need your sisterhood. And that's why I started the online community, which you can find out more on my website, which is gateway-women.com. Don't forget the hyphen, or you get to a church in Texas. I think they've had some really weird emails over the past couple of years. And my book, which is coming out later this spring, which is called Rocking the Life Unexpected, because it is possible to be a childless woman and for your life to rock. Thank you very much.